Maya Singh adjusted her grip on the rifle, trying to ignore the snickers coming from behind her. The military training ground was buzzing with activity, as dozens of new recruits practiced their shooting skills under the harsh afternoon sun. She had been standing at position 7 for the past 20 minutes, carefully lining up her shots while enduring the constant stream of whispered comments and barely contained laughter from her fellow trainees. "Look at her shaking," whispered Private Johnson, a tall boy from Texas who had made it clear from day one that he didn't think women belonged in combat training. "She can barely hold the weapon steady." "Maybe she should try knitting instead," added Private Chen, earning a round of quiet chuckles from the group gathered behind Maya. "My grandmother has steadier hands than that." Maya's jaw tightened, but she forced herself to remain focused on the target downrange. She had heard worse during her 3 weeks at the military academy. Being one of only 12 women among 200 male recruits meant she was constantly under scrutiny. Every mistake was magnified, every success diminished. The other female recruits had learned to keep their heads down and blend in, but Maya had a different approach. She believed in proving herself through action, not words. The shooting instructor, Sergeant Williams, walked down the line of recruits, occasionally barking corrections or adjustments. He was a gruff man in his 40s who had seen 3 tours of duty and had little patience for excuses. When he reached Maya's position, he paused and watched her form critically. "Your stance is too rigid, Singh," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Loosen up those shoulders. You're not posing for a statue." More laughter rippled through the group behind her. Maya took a deep breath and adjusted her position, trying to find the balance between stability and flexibility that the sergeant had demonstrated earlier. She had been practicing every evening after regular training hours, using the indoor range when it was nearly empty. Her accuracy had improved dramatically over the past week, but she still struggled with consistency under pressure. "Take your time," Sergeant Williams continued, his tone neutral but not unkind. "Remember, it's not about speed right now. It's about precision." Maya nodded and raised the rifle again. The target seemed impossibly small at 100 yards, just a black circle on a white background. She controlled her breathing the way she had been taught, inhaling deeply, exhaling halfway, then holding her breath as she squeezed the trigger slowly and steadily. The rifle cracked, and she immediately knew she had missed the bullseye. Through her scope, she could see the small hole in the outer ring of the target. Not terrible, but not the center shot she had been aiming for. "Better," said Sergeant Williams, making a note on his clipboard, "but still pulling to the right. Check your grip." Behind her, the commentary continued in hushed tones. "She's trying so hard it's almost painful to watch," said Private Martinez. "Why doesn't she just admit she's not cut out for this?" "Because she's stubborn," replied Johnson. "Probably thinks she has something to prove because she's the only girl from her hometown or something." They weren't entirely wrong, Maya reflected as she prepared for her next shot. She was from a small farming community in Punjab, India, where her family had immigrated when she was just 5 years old. Her father worked double shifts at a textile factory, while her mother cleaned offices at night to make ends meet. When Maya had announced her intention to join the military, her parents had been both proud and terrified. No one from their community had ever pursued a career in the armed forces, especially not a young woman. Her younger brother had been supportive but worried. "Are you sure about this, Maya?" he had asked the night before she left for basic training. "It's going to be really tough. Maybe you could try something else first, like becoming a teacher or a nurse." Maya had smiled at his concern but remained firm in her decision. "I've wanted this since I was 12 years old, Arjun. Remember when we watched that documentary about the first female fighter pilots? I knew then that I wanted to serve my country in uniform. Now, standing on this dusty training ground with sweat trickling down her back and doubt creeping into her mind, Maya wondered if her family's concerns had been justified. The physical training had been brutal but manageable. The academic coursework was challenging but fair. It was the social aspect that wore on her most. The constant feeling of being watched, judged, and found wanting by many of her peers was exhausting. She fired another shot and was pleased to see it land much closer to the center of the target. Her confidence began to build slightly, and she settled into a better rhythm. The third shot was even better, and the fourth was almost dead center. "Now that's more like it," said Sergeant Williams, and Maya felt a small surge of pride. But her moment of satisfaction was short-lived. As she prepared for her fifth shot, Private Johnson's voice carried clearly across the range. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. Let's see if she can do it again. The comment hit harder than Maya expected, probably because she was already feeling vulnerable and exposed. Her hands trembled slightly as she raised the rifle again, and she could feel her heart rate increasing. This was exactly what she had been trying to avoid, letting their words get under her skin and affect her performance. She took several deep breaths, trying to recenter herself. Her father had always told her that the opinions of others were like clouds in the sky. Sometimes they blocked the sun, but they always moved on if you waited long enough. She needed to find that patience and inner strength now. The fifth shot went wide, missing the target entirely and hitting the dirt berm behind it. The laughter from her audience was no longer subtle or hushed. Several recruits openly chuckled, and she heard someone whisper, "And there she goes again." Maya's face burned with embarrassment, but she forced herself to remain in position. She had 2 more shots in this round, and she was determined to finish strong regardless of what anyone said or thought. This was about more than just target practice. This was about proving to herself that she belonged here, that she had what it took to succeed in one of the most demanding careers in the world. The 6th shot found its mark just outside the bullseye, and Maya felt some of her confidence return. She took extra time with the 7th and final shot of the round, blocking out everything except the feel of the rifle in her hands and the small black circle in her scope. When she squeezed the trigger, she knew immediately that it was a good shot. The bullet punched through the paper just left of center. Not perfect, but respectable. "Time," called Sergeant Williams, and all the recruits lowered their weapons and stepped back from the firing line. "Collect your targets and mark your scores. We'll review the results in 10 minutes. Maya walked downrange with the others to retrieve her target. As she examined the cluster of holes in the paper, she felt a mix of disappointment and determination. 4 decent shots out of 7 wasn't terrible for someone who had never touched a firearm before joining the military, but it wasn't the level of performance she knew she was capable of achieving. Private Johnson appeared beside her, looking at his own target with obvious satisfaction. His shots were tightly grouped in the center ring, with 2 bullseyes out of 7 attempts. "Not bad for a farm boy from Texas," he said with a grin, then glanced at Maya's target. "You might want to consider switching to the kitchen detail. Sing, I hear they're looking for help with food prep." "Thanks for the suggestion," Maya replied evenly, "but I think I'll stick with what I'm doing." "Suit yourself," Johnson shrugged. "But you're just making it harder on everyone else. When you wash out in a few weeks, they'll probably lower the standards to accommodate more people like you. That's not fair to those of us who actually belong here." Maya bit back the sharp response that came to mind. Getting into an argument wouldn't prove anything except that she couldn't control her temper under pressure. Instead, she folded her target carefully and walked back to the group gathering around Sergeant Williams. The instructor reviewed the overall performance of the squad, noting areas for improvement and highlighting a few standout scores. Johnson's name was mentioned twice for his accuracy, while Maya's performance wasn't discussed at all. She tried not to take it personally, but the omission stung nonetheless. After the formal debrief, the recruits were dismissed for afternoon physical training. Maya was gathering her equipment when she noticed a small group of her fellow trainees still lingering near the shooting positions. They weren't being particularly quiet about their conversation, and she couldn't help but overhear. "I don't get why they even let women into combat training," said Private Davis, a stocky guy from Michigan who had struggled with the academic portions of their coursework. "It's not like they're going to be effective in real combat situations. The whole thing is just political correctness gone wrong," agreed Private Thompson. "They're going to get people killed trying to prove some kind of point about equality." Private Martinez, who had generally been more neutral in his comments, looked uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "I don't know, guys. Some of the women in our class are pretty tough. Rodriguez scored higher than most of us on the endurance test last week." "That's different," Davis replied dismissively. "Running and doing push-ups is one thing. Actually fighting is something else entirely. Look at Singh over there. She can barely hit a stationary target under perfect conditions. What's going to happen when someone is shooting back at her?" Maya pretended to be busy checking her rifle while listening to their debate. Part of her wanted to walk over and defend herself, but she had learned that engaging in these arguments usually made things worse. The best response was to improve her performance and let her actions speak for themselves. That evening, after dinner and the mandatory study hour, Maya made her way to the indoor shooting range. She had discovered that it stayed open until 9 p.m. for individual practice, and she had been taking advantage of the extra time to work on her technique. The range was nearly empty at this hour, with only 2 other recruits practicing at the far end. She set up at her preferred lane and began with the basic exercises that Sergeant Williams had demonstrated. Dry firing practice to work on her trigger pull, breathing exercises to improve her stability, sight alignment drills to train her eye. She had checked out several books on marksmanship from the base library and had been studying the theory behind accurate shooting. After 30 minutes of preparatory work, Maya loaded her first magazine and began shooting at targets set at 50 yards, closer than the 100-yard distance they had used during the day. She wanted to build her confidence with successful shots before gradually increasing the difficulty. The first few shots were encouraging. She was hitting the center area consistently, and her groups were much tighter than they had been during the afternoon session. Without the pressure of being watched and judged by her peers, she felt more relaxed and focused. Good form. Maya nearly jumped out of her skin at the unexpected voice behind her. She turned to see a woman in her 30s wearing the uniform of a staff sergeant. The newcomer was of medium height with short brown hair and the kind of confident posture that spoke of years of military experience. "Thank you, ma'am," Maya replied, not sure of the proper protocol for the situation. "I'm Staff Sergeant Rebecca Torres," the woman said with a slight smile. "I've been watching you practice here for the past few evenings. Mind if I offer some suggestions?" Maya nodded eagerly. Any advice from someone with more experience was welcome, especially from another woman who had obviously succeeded in the military environment. "Your stance is good, and your breathing technique is solid," Torres continued, moving to stand beside Maya. "But you're overthinking the shot. I can see you hesitating just before you pull the trigger. That split second of doubt is throwing off your timing. How do you know when you're ready to shoot?" Maya asked. "It's more about trusting the process than making a conscious decision," Torres explained. "When your sight picture is correct and your breathing is controlled, the shot should happen naturally. Think of it like, have you ever played piano?" Maya shook her head. "Okay, how about this? Have you ever thrown a ball to hit a specific target?" "Yes, I used to play cricket back home." "Perfect. When you're bowling or throwing in cricket, do you consciously think about every muscle movement, or do you just trust your body to execute the motion you've practiced?" "I trust my practice," Maya said, beginning to understand. "Exactly. Shooting is the same way. You align your sights, control your breathing, and then trust that your hours of practice will guide the bullet where it needs to go. The hesitation comes from doubt, and doubt creates tension, which affects accuracy." Torres picked up Maya's rifle and demonstrated the principle. Her movements were fluid and confident, and when she fired, the shot struck dead center of the bullseye. "Now you try," she said, handing the weapon back. "Don't think about the result. Just focus on the process and trust your training." Maya took the rifle and tried to apply what Torres had just shown her. She found her sight picture, controlled her breathing, and then, instead of pausing to second-guess herself, simply let the shot happen when everything felt right. The bullet hit just outside the bullseye, the closest she had come to a perfect shot since arriving at the academy. "Much better," Torres said with approval. "That's the difference between shooting and marksmanship. Keep practicing with that mindset, and you'll see significant improvement." Over the next 2 weeks, Maya continued her evening practice sessions with renewed focus. Staff Sergeant Torres stopped by occasionally to offer guidance and encouragement, but Maya was careful not to mention these interactions to her fellow recruits. She had learned that any special attention, even helpful coaching, could be twisted into another reason to question her qualifications. Her performance during official training sessions began to improve steadily. While she still wasn't the top shooter in her class, she was no longer the obvious target for criticism and mockery. The comments from Johnson and his friends became less frequent, though they didn't disappear entirely. One afternoon, during a particularly challenging training exercise, Maya found herself paired with Private Martinez for a buddy system drill. They were required to navigate through an obstacle course while taking turns covering each other with their weapons. Martinez had always been more neutral in his attitude toward the female recruits, neither openly hostile nor particularly supportive. "You've gotten a lot better," he commented as they waited for their turn to run the course. "Your shooting scores have been pretty solid lately." "Thanks," Maya replied, surprised by the compliment. "I've been putting in extra practice time." It shows, Martinez said. Johnson and his crew can be pretty harsh, but don't let them get to you. Half of what they say is just because they're scared of looking bad themselves. Before Maya could respond, their names were called, and they moved to the starting position. The course was designed to simulate urban combat conditions, with walls to climb over, barriers to crawl under, and pop-up targets that required quick but accurate shooting. Each team was timed, and their scores would contribute to their overall class ranking. Maya and Martinez worked well together, communicating clearly and moving efficiently through the obstacles. When they reached the shooting portion of the exercise, Maya felt confident and ready. The targets appeared at irregular intervals from different directions, requiring them to identify threats quickly and engage accurately while maintaining awareness of their surroundings. She fired 6 shots during their run through the course, hitting 5 targets cleanly and missing 1 by just inches. Martinez performed similarly well, and their combined time put them in the top third of all teams that day. As they walked back to the assembly area, Maya felt genuinely proud of her performance. "Nice shooting out there, Singh," called Sergeant Williams as they passed. That was some solid work under pressure. The public recognition felt wonderful, but Maya noticed the look she received from some of her classmates. Johnson in particular seemed annoyed by the praise she had received. She overheard him talking to Davis as they gathered their equipment. "Beginner's luck," Johnson was saying. "Let's see if she can do it again when it really matters." "Maybe," Davis replied. "But did you see how calm she was out there? She didn't look nervous at all." The conversation bothered Maya more than the usual criticism. There was something unsettling about the way Johnson dismissed her success so quickly, as if he needed her to fail in order to validate his own prejudices. She was beginning to understand that some people would never accept her competence no matter how much she improved. That evening, Maya decided to skip her usual practice session and instead spent time writing a letter to her family. She hadn't communicated with them much since arriving at the academy, partly because she was so busy and partly because she wasn't sure what to say. How could she explain the daily challenges of proving herself worthy of respect in an environment where many people seemed determined to see her fail? She wrote about the positive aspects of her training, the physical conditioning that was making her stronger than she had ever been, the technical skills she was learning, and the sense of purpose that came from working toward a meaningful career. But she also found herself describing the isolation and frustration of being constantly judged by different standards than her male counterparts. "Sometimes, I wonder if I'm being too stubborn," she wrote to her parents. "Maybe it would be easier to choose a different path, one where I wouldn't have to fight so hard just to be taken seriously. But then I remember why I wanted this in the first place, and I know I can't give up." Not yet. The next morning brought news that would test Maya's resolve even further. Sergeant Williams announced that their class would be participating in a major training exercise the following week. They would be evaluated by senior officers from across the base, and the results would significantly impact their final rankings and assignments. "This is not a drill," Williams emphasized. "The officers observing this exercise are the same people who will be making decisions about your future careers. They'll be looking for leadership potential, technical competence, and the ability to perform under pressure. Some of you will impress them, others will not. The difference will determine whether you advance to specialized training or find yourselves assigned to support roles." The announcement created a buzz of nervous energy throughout the group. Maya felt her stomach tighten as she considered the implications. This would be her chance to prove definitively that she belonged in a combat role, but it would also give her critics an opportunity to see her fail in front of the people who mattered most. During the lunch break, she overheard Johnson talking to a group of other recruits about the upcoming exercise. His confidence was evident as he discussed strategy and predicted his own strong performance. "The key is staying cool under pressure," he was saying. "Some people just don't have what it takes when the stakes are high. We'll find out real quick who belongs here and who doesn't." His eyes met Maya's across the dining hall, and she knew his comments were directed at her. The challenge was clear, even though it hadn't been stated directly. That afternoon's training session was more intense than usual as everyone tried to maximize their preparation time. Maya threw herself into every exercise with renewed determination, pushing her body and mind to their limits. Her shooting was sharp and consistent, her movements through tactical exercises were smooth and confident, and her leadership during team exercises was clear and decisive. Staff Sergeant Torres appeared near the end of the session and watched Maya's performance with approval. As the other recruits headed back to their barracks, Torres approached Maya privately. "I heard about next week's evaluation," she said. "How are you feeling about it?" "Nervous," Maya admitted, "but also excited. I think I'm ready." "I think you are too," Torres replied. "But remember, this isn't just about your individual performance. The evaluators will be watching how you interact with your team, how you handle leadership opportunities, and how you respond to unexpected challenges. Technical skills are important, but they're looking for something more than just good shooting." "What kind of something more?" Maya asked. "They want to see who has the potential to lead others in combat situations, who can make sound decisions under pressure, who can be trusted with responsibility for other people's lives. Those are the qualities that separate good soldiers from great ones." Maya nodded thoughtfully. She had been so focused on proving her technical competence that she hadn't given much thought to the broader leadership aspects of military service. "The good news," Torres continued, "is that you already demonstrate many of those qualities. The way you've handled the social challenges here, the persistence you've shown in improving your skills, and the composure you maintain under criticism, those are all indicators of strong character. Don't lose sight of that during the evaluation." As Maya walked back to her barracks that evening, she felt a mixture of anxiety and anticipation about the week ahead. This would be her moment of truth, the test that would determine whether months of hard work and sacrifice had been worthwhile. She was as ready as she could be, but she knew that preparation could only take her so far. The rest would come down to her ability to perform when everything was on the line. The day of the major evaluation arrived with an unusual chill in the air. Maya woke before dawn, her stomach churning with nervous energy. She had barely slept, running through scenarios and second-guessing her preparation. As she dressed in her perfectly pressed uniform, she caught sight of herself in the small mirror above her locker. The young woman looking back at her appeared more confident than she felt, shoulders straight and jaw set with determination. The evaluation would take place over 3 days, with different phases testing various aspects of their training. Today would focus on individual marksmanship, tactical movement, and decision-making under pressure. Tomorrow would involve team-based exercises and leadership rotations. The final day would culminate in a complex simulation that combined everything they had learned. Maya joined the stream of recruits heading to the main training area, where several senior officers were already positioned at observation stations. She recognized Colonel Patterson, the base commander, along with Major Stevens from the Combat Training Division and Captain Morrison, who oversaw recruit evaluations. Their presence elevated the significance of everything that would happen over the next 3 days. Sergeant Williams gathered the recruits for a final briefing. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is what you've been training for. The officers here today are evaluating you for advanced placement opportunities. Give them your best effort and represent yourselves with honor." The first event was individual marksmanship at varying distances. Maya drew position 12. Right in the middle of the group where her performance would be clearly visible to all observers. As she waited for her turn, she watched the recruits ahead of her with growing anxiety. Johnson shot first and performed flawlessly, hitting bullseyes at 50, 100, and 200 yards with casual precision that drew approving nods from the evaluators. Several other strong shooters followed with similarly impressive displays. By the time Maya's name was called, she felt the weight of expectation and the familiar sting of doubt creeping into her confidence. The whispered conversations from other recruits weren't helping her mental state. "Let's see if all that extra practice time pays off," she heard someone say behind her. "Probably just going to choke under pressure like always," came another voice that sounded like Davis. Maya forced herself to block out the commentary and focus on Staff Sergeant Torres's advice about trusting the process. She approached the firing line with deliberate calmness, checked her equipment methodically, and settled into her shooting position. The 50-yard targets came first. Maya found her sight picture, controlled her breathing, and let the shot happen naturally without overthinking. The bullet struck dead center of the bullseye. She repeated the process twice more, grouping all 3 shots within the inner ring. "Excellent start, recruit," called Major Stevens from the observation area. His voice carried clearly across the range, and Maya felt a surge of confidence from the public recognition. The 100-yard phase went equally well. Maya's shots weren't quite as perfectly centered as Johnson's had been, but they were consistent and accurate, all hitting within the scoring zone. She was beginning to feel that maybe, just maybe, she could perform well when it mattered most. The 200-yard targets presented a much greater challenge. At this distance, environmental factors like wind became significant, and the margin for error was much smaller. Maya took her time setting up, carefully observing the flags that indicated wind direction and speed. Her first shot at the long distance was slightly left of center but still well within the target area. The second shot was better, closer to the bullseye. For her final shot, she made a small adjustment for wind drift and squeezed the trigger with complete confidence. The bullet struck just right of center. Not perfect, but a solid hit that demonstrated competence at a challenging distance. She heard Colonel Patterson comment to Major Stevens, "That's some steady shooting under pressure." Maya completed her marksmanship phase with scores that placed her in the top quarter of her class. Not the absolute best, but respectable enough to earn approving comments from the evaluators. More importantly, she had proven to herself that she could perform when the stakes were highest. The tactical movement exercise came next. Recruits had to navigate through a complex course that simulated urban combat conditions, while engaging targets and making decisions about threats versus civilians. This phase would test not just their shooting skills but their ability to think clearly under pressure. Maya moved through the course with careful precision, taking time to identify each target before engaging. Some recruits ahead of her had rushed through the exercise, resulting in missed shots or worse, engaging civilian targets by mistake. She was determined to be thorough, even if it meant taking longer to complete the course. Halfway through the exercise, she encountered a scenario that hadn't appeared in any of their practice sessions. 2 targets popped up simultaneously, one clearly marked as an enemy combatant, the other ambiguous enough to require careful identification. Maya paused for a crucial moment to assess the situation properly before engaging only the confirmed threat. "Good judgment," she heard Captain Morrison note to his clipboard. "She's thinking before shooting." Maya completed the tactical course with a time that was average for her class but with perfect accuracy and no civilian casualties. Several recruits who had finished faster had made critical errors that would significantly impact their scores. Her methodical approach had paid off. The final individual event of the day was a decision-making scenario where recruits were presented with complex situations requiring quick but sound judgment. Maya found herself faced with a hypothetical situation involving civilian casualties, limited ammunition, and multiple potential courses of action. She took a moment to consider all the factors before presenting her solution clearly and confidently. Her answer demonstrated tactical knowledge, concern for civilian safety, and understanding of the broader mission objectives. Colonel Patterson asked several follow-up questions that allowed Maya to elaborate on her reasoning and show depth of thinking. As the individual evaluations concluded, Maya felt cautiously optimistic about her performance. She hadn't been perfect, but she had been solid and consistent across all events. More importantly, she had maintained her composure under the intense scrutiny of senior officers and the pressure of knowing that these results would significantly impact her future. During the evening debrief, Sergeant Williams announced the preliminary rankings. Maya found herself in 8th place out of 32 recruits, and a result that exceeded her expectations and clearly established her as a serious candidate for advanced training opportunities. Johnson maintained his position at the top of the rankings, but the gap between him and the middle of the pack was smaller than many had expected. Several recruits who had been confident about their prospects found themselves lower than anticipated, while others had performed better than anyone predicted. "Remember," Sergeant Williams cautioned, "these are just the individual results. Tomorrow's team exercises count for just as much, and the final simulation is worth 30% of your total score." Nobody's position is secure yet. That evening, Maya called her parents for the first time since arriving at the academy. She felt she finally had genuinely good news to share and wanted to hear familiar voices after such an intense day. "I'm proud of you no matter what happens next," her father said after she described her performance. "You've already proven that you belong there. Just remember to stay focused and don't let success go to your head," added her mother with typical practical wisdom. The hardest part might still be ahead of you. Maya knew her mother was right. The team exercises would present different challenges, and would test aspects of her character that individual performance couldn't reveal. Some of her classmates who had been critical of her abilities would now be forced to work with her as an equal, and their reaction to her success might create new sources of tension. But for tonight, she allowed herself to feel proud of what she had accomplished. She had faced her doubts and the skepticism of others and proven that she could perform under pressure. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she was ready to meet them with the confidence that came from knowing she belonged exactly where she was. The second day of evaluations began with team formation. Maya found herself assigned to Squad Alpha, along with Johnson, Martinez, Davis, and 2 other recruits she knew less well, Thompson from Virginia and Rodriguez from California. The irony wasn't lost on her that she would be working closely with some of the same people who had been most vocal in questioning her abilities. Johnson was designated as the initial squad leader for the morning exercises, a role that seemed to suit his natural confidence and strong individual performance from the previous day. Maya wondered how he would handle having her as a subordinate, given their history of tension. "All right, listen up," Johnson addressed the squad as they prepared for their first exercise. "We're going to be evaluated on teamwork, communication, and mission accomplishment. Personal feelings don't matter out here. We succeed or fail together." His tone was professional, and Maya appreciated that he seemed to be taking the leadership role seriously, rather than using it as an opportunity to undermine her. Perhaps the presence of senior officers was encouraging everyone to put aside their personal conflicts. The first team exercise was a reconnaissance mission where they had to gather intelligence about enemy positions while remaining undetected. Each squad member had specific responsibilities, and success required precise coordination and clear communication. Maya was assigned as the team's designated marksman, responsible for providing overwatch while the others moved through the target area. It was a role that played to her strengths while also requiring her to support her teammates effectively. From her elevated position, Maya had excellent visibility of the entire exercise area. She could see her squad members moving carefully through their assigned routes and spot the evaluator-controlled enemy positions that they needed to identify and report. "Alpha 6? This is Overwatch," Maya spoke quietly into her radio using Johnson's call sign. "I have eyes on 2 enemy positions at your 10 and 2 o'clock. Recommend holding current position while Rodriguez flanks left." Johnson acknowledged her report and adjusted the squad's movement accordingly. Maya continued providing updates and warnings as the exercise progressed, helping her team avoid detection while gathering the required intelligence. When Thompson moved into a potentially dangerous position, Maya quickly radioed, "Thunder, you have an enemy patrol approaching from your 6. Suggest moving to cover behind the concrete barrier at your 3 o'clock. Thompson followed her guidance and avoided being spotted by the opposing force. The exercise concluded successfully with Squad Alpha, gathering all required intelligence without being detected, a result that earned praise from the evaluating officers. "Outstanding situational awareness and communication," Major Stevens noted as they completed their debrief. "That's how teamwork is supposed to function." Maya felt a sense of satisfaction not just from the successful mission, but from the way her teammates had trusted and acted on her information. Johnson had given her clear acknowledgement for her contributions, and even Davis had thanked her privately for the warning that had kept him from walking into an ambush. The leadership roles rotated for the afternoon exercise, and Maya found herself designated as squad leader for a more complex mission involving multiple objectives and time pressure. This was her opportunity to demonstrate her ability to make decisions, manage resources, and guide others under stress. The scenario involved rescuing wounded personnel while under enemy fire. Maya had to coordinate her team's movements, assign specific roles, and adapt to changing conditions as the exercise progressed. The evaluating officers would be watching not just for tactical competence, but for leadership qualities like clear communication, sound judgment, and the ability to maintain team cohesion under pressure. "Okay, everyone gather around," Maya called her squad together for initial planning. "We have 2 wounded personnel at separate locations, limited time, and enemy forces between us and our objectives. We need to move fast but smart." She quickly outlined her plan, assigning Martinez and Rodriguez to rescue Team 1 while she led Johnson and Davis toward the second objective. Thompson would provide covering fire and coordinate communications between the 2 elements. "Questions?" Maya asked, looking at each team member. When no one spoke up, she continued, "Remember, Mission success depends on everyone doing their job and supporting each other. Let's move. The exercise began with Maya leading her element toward their objective, while staying in constant communication with Martinez's team. Enemy fire erupted from multiple positions, requiring quick decisions about cover and movement. Contact left. Johnson called out as simulated gunfire erupted from their flank. Maya immediately assessed the threat and made a tactical decision. Davis, suppress that position. Johnson, move with me to flank around the right side. We need to keep moving toward the objective. Her team executed the plan smoothly, with Davis laying down covering fire while Maya and Johnson advanced to a better position. Meanwhile, she maintained radio contact with the other element and coordinated their movements to ensure both teams could accomplish their missions. When Martinez's team encountered unexpected opposition, Maya had to make a quick decision about whether to send reinforcements or continue with the original plan. She chose to redirect Thompson to provide additional support for Martinez while continuing toward her own objective with a reduced team. Overwatch, this is Alpha 6, she radioed to Thompson. Shift fire to support Martinez's element. Johnson and Davis can handle our objective. The decision proved correct when both teams successfully reached their objectives and completed the rescue mission within the time limit. Maya's ability to adapt the plan under pressure and make sound tactical decisions had impressed the evaluators. Solid leadership under fire, Colonel Patterson commented during the debrief. Good instincts and clear communication throughout the exercise. Maya felt a deep sense of accomplishment, not just from the praise but from seeing how well her team had performed together. Johnson had followed her orders without hesitation. Davis had executed his assigned tasks effectively, and the entire squad had functioned as a cohesive unit. As they gathered their equipment after the exercise, Johnson approached Maya privately. That was good leadership out there, he said quietly. You made the right calls under pressure. Coming from someone who had been openly skeptical of her abilities, the acknowledgement meant more to Maya than any official praise. Thanks, she replied. You made it easy by following through on every assignment. Yeah, well, Johnson seemed slightly uncomfortable with the more collegial tone of their conversation. I guess we all want the squad to succeed. The evening brought individual counseling sessions where each recruit met with their evaluating officers to discuss their performance and receive feedback. Maya was scheduled to meet with Captain Morrison, who had been observing her closely throughout both days of exercises. Have a seat, Singh, Morrison said as Maya entered the small conference room. Let's talk about how things are going. Maya sat at attention, unsure what to expect from this private conversation. First, let me say that your performance over the past 2 days has been impressive, Morrison began. Your marksmanship scores were solid, your tactical decision-making was sound, and your leadership during today's exercise demonstrated real potential. Maya felt a surge of relief and pride but maintained her composure. However, Morrison continued, I want to talk about something else I've observed. How have you handled the social dynamics within your training class? The question caught Maya off guard. She hadn't expected the evaluators to be paying attention to interpersonal relationships among the recruits. I'm not sure I understand what you're asking. Sir, she replied carefully. I've been told that you've faced some challenges from fellow recruits who questioned whether you belonged in this program, Morrison said directly. I'm interested in how you've dealt with that situation. Maya considered her response carefully. She didn't want to sound like she was complaining or making excuses, but she also sensed that Morrison was asking for a reason. There have been some challenges, sir, she admitted. Some of my classmates had concerns about women in combat roles. I tried to address those concerns through my performance rather than through arguments. That's exactly what I wanted to hear, Morrison said with approval. One of the most important qualities we look for in military leaders is the ability to earn respect through competence and character, rather than through rank or authority. You've demonstrated that ability under difficult circumstances. Morrison leaned forward slightly. I'll be honest with you, Singh. We were aware of the dynamics in your training class. Some of the instructors were concerned about how you would handle the pressure. The fact that you've not only survived but thrived under those conditions tells us a lot about your potential. Maya felt a mix of emotions. Relief that her struggles had been recognized, pride that she had handled them well, and curiosity about what this conversation meant for her future. When Martinez's team encountered unexpected opposition, Maya had to make a quick decision about whether to send reinforcements or continue with the original plan. She chose to redirect Thompson to provide additional support for Martinez, while continuing toward her own objective with a reduced team. "Overwatch, this is Alpha 6, she radioed to Thompson. "Shift fire to support Martinez's element. Johnson and Davis can handle our objective." The decision proved correct. The final day began before sunrise with an unexpected announcement. Instead of the complex simulation they had been preparing for, the recruits would face a live fire exercise with real ammunition. The stakes had just been raised significantly, and Maya could feel the tension ripple through the assembled group. Colonel Patterson himself addressed the recruits before the exercise began. "Today you will demonstrate everything you have learned under the most realistic conditions possible. This is not a game or a simulation. You will be using live ammunition, working with actual explosives, and making decisions that could have real consequences." Maya's squad had been reorganized one final time, and she found herself designated as squad leader for this crucial exercise. The irony was complete. The woman who had been mocked for her shooting just weeks ago was now entrusted with leading a team in the most dangerous training exercise of their careers. The mission scenario was complex and demanding. Her squad had to infiltrate an enemy compound, neutralize specific targets, rescue hostages, and extract safely while under live fire from instructors playing enemy forces. Every decision would be evaluated, every shot would count, and any mistake could result in serious injury. As Maya gathered her team for final planning, she noticed something different in their attitudes. Johnson, Davis, Martinez, and the others were looking at her with genuine respect and confidence. The skepticism and doubt that had characterized their early interactions had been replaced by professional trust. "Listen carefully," Maya addressed her squad. "This is real ammunition, real danger, and real consequences. Everyone needs to be sharp, follow orders precisely, and watch out for each other. Our success depends on perfect teamwork." She outlined her tactical plan, assigning specific roles based on each team member's strengths. Johnson would handle breaching operations, Davis would provide suppressing fire, Martinez would coordinate communications, and the others would execute the rescue and extraction phases. "Questions?" Maya asked as she concluded her briefing. "What if things go wrong?" asked Davis, voicing the concern they all felt. "Then we adapt and overcome," Maya replied with quiet confidence. "We trust our training, support each other, and complete the mission. That's what soldiers do." The exercise began with Maya leading her squad through a series of obstacles toward their objective. Real bullets cracked overhead as instructor opponents provided realistic enemy fire. The sound and intensity were unlike anything they had experienced in training, and Maya could feel her heart pounding as adrenaline coursed through her system. But instead of panic or confusion, Maya felt a strange sense of clarity and purpose. All the months of training, all the practice sessions, all the criticism and doubt had led to this moment. She knew exactly what needed to be done. "Contact front," Martinez called out as enemy positions opened fire from their target building. Maya immediately assessed the situation and began issuing orders. "Davis, suppress the second-floor windows. Johnson, prep your breaching charge for the north entrance. Martinez, call for covering fire from Overwatch." Her squad moved with precision and confidence, executing each order flawlessly while maintaining communications and mutual support. Maya found herself thinking several steps ahead, anticipating problems and positioning her team for success. When they reached the target building, Johnson's breach was perfect, creating an entry point exactly where Maya had planned. The team flowed through the opening in textbook formation, with Maya leading from the front while maintaining command and control. Inside the building, they encountered the hostage scenario. Simulated civilians mixed with enemy combatants in a complex environment that required split-second identification and precise shooting. Maya moved through the room systematically, her rifle ready but her finger off the trigger until she had positive identification of legitimate targets. "Tango down," she called, out after engaging an instructor opponent who had been threatening a hostage. Her shot had been perfect. Center mass hit that would have immediately neutralized the threat without endangering nearby civilians. The exercise continued through multiple phases, each more challenging than the last. Maya's squad had to adapt to changing conditions, overcome unexpected obstacles, and maintain mission focus while under constant pressure. Throughout it all, Maya's leadership remained calm, decisive, and effective. During the final extraction phase, they encountered the most challenging situation of the entire exercise. Enemy forces had surrounded their planned exit route, and Maya had to make an instant decision about whether to fight through the ambush or find an alternative escape route. "Alpha Team, this is 6. Maya radioed to her squad. "Primary extraction route is compromised. Shifting to alternate route Bravo. Follow my lead and maintain security." She led her team through a complex movement that avoided the ambush while still accomplishing their mission objectives. The decision required quick thinking, tactical knowledge, and confidence in her team's abilities, all qualities that had been developed through months of intensive training. As they reached the final checkpoint and the exercise concluded, Maya felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Her squad had performed flawlessly, completing every objective without casualties or major errors. More importantly, she had proven to herself and others that she possessed the judgment, skill, and leadership ability to succeed in the most demanding military roles. Colonel Patterson approached Maya as she was conducting her post-exercise debrief with the squad. "Outstanding leadership, Singh," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. That was textbook execution under pressure. Maya came to attention, but Patterson waved her to relax. "I have something to tell you," he continued. "We've been watching your progress throughout this training cycle, and your performance today confirmed what we already suspected." Maya waited anxiously for him to continue. "You're being recommended for special operations training," Patterson announced. "Congratulations, soldier. You've earned it." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Special operations was the elite of the elite, the most challenging and prestigious career path in the military. It was an opportunity she had dreamed about but never dared to expect. Around her, her squad members broke into genuine smiles and congratulations. Johnson stepped forward first, extending his hand with obvious respect. "Congratulations," he said sincerely. "You've earned every bit of this." Davis nodded his agreement. "We all knew you had it in you. Well, maybe we didn't know it at first, but we figured it out eventually." Even the instructors who had been playing enemy forces during the exercise gathered around to offer their congratulations. Several mentioned specific moments during the exercise where Maya's decisions had impressed them. As Maya walked back to her barracks that evening, she reflected on the incredible journey she had completed. She thought about the young woman who had stood on the firing range just months ago, enduring mockery and doubt, while struggling to prove herself worthy of basic acceptance. That woman had faced every challenge with determination and grace, refusing to let criticism define her capabilities or limit her aspirations. She had transformed doubt into confidence, skepticism into respect, and dreams into reality through sheer force of will and countless hours of dedicated effort. Maya paused to look back at the training facility that had been her home for the past several months. Tomorrow, she would begin preparing for an entirely new level of challenge and opportunity. But tonight, she allowed herself to feel proud of what she had accomplished and grateful for the people who had supported her along the way. She thought about Staff Sergeant Torres, whose guidance had been crucial during those difficult early weeks. She thought about her family, whose faith had sustained her through moments of doubt. And she thought about her squad mates who had evolved from critics to trusted teammates. Most of all, she thought about the power of persistence and the importance of believing in yourself even when others don't. Maya Singh had proven that determination, character, and skill could overcome any obstacle, even the deeply ingrained prejudices that had initially greeted her arrival at the academy. As she prepared for bed, Maya smiled at the thought of calling her parents with the news. Her father had always told her that success was measured not by the absence of challenges, but by the courage to face them head-on. By that measure, she had succeeded beyond her wildest dreams. The young woman who had been jeered at while practicing her aim had become a special operations candidate through the simple act of refusing to give up. And tomorrow her real adventure would begin.